January 2025. Turn that on. Thank you for everybody coming to our unusual time. Glad you could all make it. I think Rick's coming in. Lori just walked in. Great. So we've only almost fully present. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Thank you. Thank you. I think Andy just seconded. So is there any discussion on those minutes? All in favor of approving the minutes? Raise your hand. Thank you. Are you guys here just to listen to the discussion about the complete streets resolution, I assume? Great. Okay. I assume Kay or Kevin, help me out. This okay, wait, we have applications and reappointments. And we have Rick, is that right? And Oliver, which we'll go ahead and put up there. So the first one is Rick's term expired and he has submitted an application to stay on the commission. Do we anybody oppose that? I'm going to strongly recommend that we keep Rick on the commission. All in favor? Great. Okay. I'm sorry?
Sorry, we actually do need a motion to recommend. To the Board
I will
of
make a
Trustees.
motion that we accept Rick's application to re-up his membership. Second that? Okay. All in favor? Okay. And while we're on the topic, before we'll skip down to Oliver. Oliver, who you may recognize, has come to a couple of meetings, submitted an application a while ago, but had to be put on hold because we had no openings. Good news is we have an opening. The bad news is Alex, given his work and family time, has decided to step down. So I would like to make a motion that we accept Oliver's application to join the Bike Ped Trails Commission. And I believe he would join as an alternate. All right, thank you, Kevin. Okay, thank you, David. Any discussion about that? Any questions for Oliver? All in favor of approving his application? Thank you. Thank you all for hanging in there with us. Which reminds me, I believe when, help me out, Kay, when we took Lori and Andy out at the same time, I think Lori was in the door first, so we made her full-time. Is Andy our alternate?
Both Lori and Andy are alternates.
They're both
They
alternates.
came in on this at the same time. So you need to decide, or one of them needs to be okay with being an alternate. However you want to do that. One can move into a regular member spot and the other will stay as an alternate. So.
Do you guys, I don't remember which one of you submitted the application first, and
I feel like it was really close, but I'm happy to stay as an alternate if that works for you.
I mean, and Oliver, for your purposes, the practicality of that is as an alternate, you come, you participate. The only difference is when there's a vote to be taken. If we have a full commission of 7 full-time members, then the alternates don't vote. But if we don't have somebody, then the alternate can vote. So thank you, Lori. So I'll make a motion that Andy steps in and becomes a full-time voting member. He's no longer an alternate.
Second.
Rick, second. All in favor? Okay. Okay, now I think Kevin or Kay, help me out. The one other item here is the ordinance changes that I noticed was put in. I assume that was just put in for information purposes. There's nothing really we have to discuss or vote on.
No, I think that there was a little bit of confusion around like terms and so
Right.
forth. So I just wanted to include that, and I also wanted to include the verbiage on how members.
Right, okay, good. So I did look through it. There were a few changes and it definitely clarifies the issue around terms. And so if anybody has any questions, they can refer to that. Why don't we, what I'd like to do is take the complete sheet resolution first. We have, I gotta pull it up. Resolution was drafted, I think, by two members. Is that right, Andy? Did you, I think you and David, right, participated with Age Friendly Carbondale? Do I have that right? To come up with a complete streets resolution. So it's sort of a joint effort between the Bike Ped Trail Commission and Age Friendly. And I don't know if you guys have it in front of you, need a minute to pull it up from the packet. I do. So somebody else can admit to it as well. You know, I think at the last meeting, we discussed the benefits and merits of having a complete streets resolution. Age Friendly stepped up and offered a draft one, and you guys stepped in to help. And I think the work product is great. I think it really explains why and how we'd benefit. And Rick drafted a little cover letter to go with it that would is our recommendation. That would be the Bike Ped Trail Commission's recommendation to the trustees to adopt it. I support it. I just wonder, does anybody have any questions about the process? Anybody have questions about the content? Anybody have questions about why we're recommending it? Yes, please, David.
So I had a question on Rick's, what do you call it? Whatever you title it. There were like 5 paragraphs, and he said below is, so the last, there's 2 paragraphs intro, and I assume the last 3 is saying what he's pulling from sources. Is that right?
Yeah, U.S. Department of Transportation.
Okay.
It's directly from their website, those final 3. You know, I tried to format it so those looked like quotations, but between my program and transferring, sort of lost the smaller font and indentation. But those last 3 paragraphs are directly from the Department of Transportation, U.S. Department of Transportation's website.
And is this trying to answer the question of why we want complete streets? In other words, since we have MAP, why do we need complete streets? Or is it not trying to address that per se?
Yeah, I think so. Right. I think the resolution itself addresses it. I think Rick's letter also addresses it. Right. That it's I mean, complete streets is not a plan. Right. It's a structure, a set of policies, procedures, if you will, I guess, to follow to help frame up a plan. And excuse me. But that's the intent, I think.
Okay, because I like that it does point out basically on a federal level how things are shifting to complete streets. The one thing I think that would be kind of cool to say is, in a way, that's what the 10 elements are kind of saying, but somewhere in there to say one of the reasons we like the complete streets policy is it really does make people accountable, makes the departments accountable, you know, makes it so that we truly have measurements. You know, in other words, it has these specific little things that make the map happen, because we already have the map. And if I was a trustee, I'd be like, well, the map's really cool. And I understand the whole point that it will help with grants, which I think we should really, and you did a great job of saying like, we should really do this because we're going to need money for this and this is the right path. But I do like that idea of it really makes it so that you look at the policy and when you create the policy, it's like, wow, this is for real. Like you're building it into the codes, you're building it into revisions, you know, you're creating a time plan for when you're going to have this happen. You're going to make measurements. So just somewhere in there, just saying one of the things that it helps us do is not have maps sit in my 3-ring binder, which I never knew I had a 2018 priority corridor thing until.
So, David, your thought is that we should elaborate on that a little bit in the cover letter?
Yeah, just a sentence or two, if you think it's appropriate. I mean,
No, I think that's
guess-
a legitimate point. I mean, that's
guess
one of the,
they're
that's
gonna
one of the
look at
reasons we're
this,
doing it, right?
They're gonna look at this first, I assume, and then the resolution. And then if they continue on, they'll see the 10 elements. Like if they look through the 10 elements, it kind of would be like, oh yeah, that's a lot of cool stuff. But we could just, you know, say in 1 or 2 sentences that, you know, one of the reasons we would like to support a complete streets policy is because of accountability and, you know, well-defined system for measurement and, you know, just a few other of the elements. And just in case they never get to the 10 elements.
Yeah, I think that's
That's
a great
Thank
point.
you,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're viewing this as sort of a higher level guide so that we
Yeah.
can hold the map process accountable to that higher level guide.
Right,
So
right.
Those things you mentioned, like
Yeah.
measurability.
Because if I was
accountability.
you know, a trustee, I'd be like, I don't know, we just spent a lot of money on maps. Awesome. Let's just go with it.
Right. Yes, Ken. I mean, Ally, I'm sorry.
I guess I'm just curious what the implications or the loss might be if they decide they don't want it and, you know, and say, we want to just focus on map and not do this. Is there, I mean, have we talked about that at all? Is there something we would maybe propose or consider changing if they didn't want to adopt it?
If we would consider changing what,
Something they take issue with, for example, like, is this a negotiable document?
is it a,
And is it negotiable in that if they don't like, you know, the economic growth statement,
yeah,
could we change it to try and meet their expectations, or is this a
oh, yes,
solid
I
piece?
think so. Yeah, I think if there's a question of wording, yeah, sure. I mean, we're open to taking suggestions on wording, I think. Yeah, you know, other than that, I think on Tuesday we'll wait and see how they respond. I mean, it's I think there's a strong reason for it, and I think their map makes a recommendation for it. So, you know, we'll see what happens.
We write the policy. I mean, it's the town that writes the policy.
Right.
So you can look at one town's policy and another one just threw something out and it's like, wow, you know, they must not have wanted that.
Right.
So it is in the control of the trustees for what is in the policy.
Right. How the complete streets resolution is interpreted and put into action.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
you know, I might propose that all documents have been revised in 5 years and they might just say, well, we just
Right.
want to leave it vague and say, you know, to the best, yeah, as needed, right? Which is along the lines of what MAP is. I mean, MAP says all these things are good things. It just doesn't, you know, say we should
Thank you.
be doing it. Yeah.
Curious if it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
Please, yeah.
Just a question. The point of this seems to be getting the board to say, yes, we want you guys to develop a complete streets policy. Is that kind of the gist?
No, I think we purposely want to stay away from that. I think we want the trustees to see the value in and adopt a resolution that says they're committed to complete streets, developing and following complete streets policies when they think about transit and when they implement MAP.
The resolution I thought specifically says, like, we're resolving to create a complete streets policy, right? It doesn't actually like have the details of what the policy is. At least that's my,
No, it just gives you
Understanding.
an idea of the direction you're going.
so but it's saying that, it implies that like the policy will then be written, right?
Oh, yeah, without a resolution, without the policy doesn't mean anything.
But yeah, this resolution though, as it's written, it gives you the framework of what the policy is, right? But we don't actually have that policy.
Step two.
Yeah,
And I think, Matt, you were saying, in some email, you were saying, we as a commission, we shouldn't be the people writing the policy.
I think, you know, we can and likely should play a role, but I think when you start peeling back the onion, it's a fairly complicated set of policies. And I don't think the onus should be on the Bike Ped Commission to do it. I mean, I think that, you know, if the trustees are open to the resolution and they see value in adopting it, we can figure out what the policy means and how to craft it. I just thought it was better if, you know, we stay away from doing it as unaided, right? Without authorization, without help and authorization from the trustees and some guidance and support from the trustees and staff. I don't want to be the body doing it alone. That's my feeling.
so I guess I have two things. So I think I have some like fairly substantial, or I guess first of all, yeah, I was involved. I was at like the first meeting with David and about where we're talking about this. So I've been involved, but I do have like fairly substantial concerns about this whole project, I guess. The first is just that like that part just still seems very confused to me. That it's like a little weird to be asking the trustees to pass an ordinance that's this vague, I guess, where it's like we as in like the town will write a policy, but no plan of like how that will happen, or even like or even too much detail about what that will be. That just seems a little strange to me. To me, it would make sense maybe to have a conversation with them somehow and be like, maybe we want to go this route of doing complete streets. Like, what would that look like? How would that policy be written before like asking them to like vote and pass an ordinance? The second thing, which is maybe a bigger discussion, but I'm somewhat concerned that like as MAP is being finalized, this is sort of our like a big opportunity to go to the board and say like, you finished MAP, these are like the next steps, like we need to do these projects, or whether it's actually like a construction project or just like change a process in the town or something. And I'm not convinced that asking them to pass an ordinance, to write a policy that is just an overall vision and not a specific plan to make complete streets after we've spent like a year and a half or however long writing this report, it feels like at some point we need to be like, we actually need to do something and not just start a whole nother process. I don't know. Does that, sorry if that was a little.
No, I
Does that make sense?
appreciate the comments. Let me address the second one first. That seems a little easier to me to tackle. I'm not sure the first one. And please, you guys jump in. I'll just go first. But you know, we're going to talk about MAP next, and I think we and in the you know, Rick and I spent some time trying to draft an outline or a letter that the commission might approve to send, and I think in that what we recognize a need to sort of take what MAP's given us and implement it and start taking action on things, right? So we're moving forward and getting things done. I just feel that adding the complete streets resolution instead of policies is a piece of that. They don't have to happen separately. One doesn't wait for the other.
Okay, yeah.
It's so complete streets get meshed into the execution of the plan, and it provides a framework for executing a plan. Does
Okay,
it, does
yeah.
that
Yeah, I
answer
feel
the second
Yeah,
part?
I feel better if like the complete streets is like one of the outcomes or like one of the things we're going to the board about after map. I guess I've been a little concerned that that's like the main thing that I've heard people discussing. I don't want that to be like,
Well, let's circle back
Okay.
after we discuss the map response and see if that helps.
yeah, that sounds good.
Um,
I've got Matt, this is Michael online too. I had a
oh yeah, hey,
response there.
Michael.
Yeah, if you're ready, I can jump in.
Did you have a comment? I didn't even know you were there.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just kind of responding to the first part of that. Too, I think it's worth noting in the map, the creation of a complete streets policy is one of the suggestions on page, I think it's like 16 or something. It says in there, and I think this is probably worth mentioning in our letter that accompanies the resolution, saying that assuming they adopt MAP, one of the suggestions in there is to create a complete streets policy, and then that's followed by a kind of a step-by-step process on how to create a complete streets policy. It kind of lays it out in some bullet points, and I think that could help. One, it's just good for all of us to be reminded of that because I only picked up on that today, but also it might help kind of clear up some of that confusion on what it is we're asking them to do. It kind of lists out their steps and some of the 10 elements to include in there and just makes it a little more clear.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Any,
I don't know if this would help at all is, so when we started working on this, the four of us, we had resolutions from 3 different small towns that we were given along with their policies. And this whole complete streets thing is a little confusing. I mean, it took me the longest time to just figure out what the heck is complete streets even, by name. And that's part of our role, is how do we make it so that the trustees are kind of clear on this? So one question is whether or not we want to just have as whatever, exhibit B or something, 1 or 2 of these policies, just so they can see what does a typical policy look like. I mean, they're similar-ish, they're along the same lines, they generally address those 10 elements, but in each town's way. And I don't know if that would help, so that they could see, okay, this is a resolution saying we're creating a policy, but what's a policy look like? And then they'd be able to say, oh, okay, I kind of get a point.
don't you think that the
policy is-
10 points sort of covers that?
Yeah, and that's, if it's a verbal thing to say the 10 points, basically we just build it out to say like, okay, that there's measurements. Well, what do we mean by that, measurements, or that there's coordination between the departments, and but that is basically true, is that the policy does specifically go into most of those points.
Yeah, goes into very specific
Yeah.
on how you're going to execute these things. I think the resolution and the 10 points kind of stand on their own without elaboration of what a policy looks like. I mean, personally, that's what I think. I think you can kind of imagine, what you have to do. But it's my view. I don't know what you guys think, and whether you think it would be valuable to add a copy of another town's policies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if
Yeah,
it
I don't
needs
know.
to be like officially in the resolution or whatever, but I mean, I do think, yeah, like I read through those with you. I think it's helpful to actually see one fully written out and understand more what the policies
Right.
are. So I don't know if we could just, I don't know if they have access to those links or we can share them somehow, even if it's not like an official
Right.
attachment or something. I don't know.
Oh, it could be, yeah, it could be just, a link if somebody wants to see other
Right.
examples of towns. Just trying to make it so that, for instance, if you're not clear on it, well, then how do we make it so that every one of the trustees is clear on it?
The part I'm not clear on though is not Yeah, I mean, I agree that that part is confusing and it's, I think, helpful to see those examples, but I think what's not clear is like, who will actually be leading this process once the resolution is passed to create a policy? And it just feels a little weird to, I think, ask them to pass the resolution without, like, not even without a policy, but without even like a plan of how that policy is going to be written, I guess.
Yeah, my feeling is, the resolution fits nicely with the plan in terms of how to frame up MAP and how to implement MAP. And that if you accept that hurdle, then we'll figure out how to write the policy. I think it's really difficult to write a policy. It's going to be an iterative, long process involving different components of the town. And I wouldn't want to try to tackle a policy without having the trustees understand the need for the resolution in the first place.
I guess the way I'm viewing it is we're just asking the trustees to make the commitment, and the trustees will then have to decide, how we fulfill that commitment, who will write it. Maybe it's a separate commission of combination of groups. Maybe it's the commission, maybe it's the trustees themselves, maybe it's a consultant. I don't know, but I don't think that stops us from moving forward on MAP.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's just, but I think when we're looking at what MAP in its current state, it may be where there might be a weakness. If we look at those 10 items, one of the items is create a plan for implementation. Well, we don't really have a plan for implementation. So if we know the trustees are committed to it, to this idea of complete streets, then we will need to work to make sure MAP meets that objective, whether
Right.
there's a policy finished or not on the, the complete street sites. We know that's important. We know that town's going there, so we need an implementation plan. You know what I mean?
Right.
So just one example. I mean, measurement, one of those 10 items is measure progress. We don't really have a plan for measuring progress with MAP. So we know that the town is going toward a complete streets policy. We'll work on that in MAP. So we're consistent. So I think it helps move us consistently in the right direction, so that the two parts, the plan and the MAP plan and complete streets are, coherent and support each other, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Make a commitment to adopt complete streets, because complete streets provides a framework to help implement MAP.
Right.
Kevin, you had your hand up a minute ago.
I think the board is really gonna struggle. I kind of agree with Andy. If you just say, like, we want you to commit to creating a complete streets policy, their natural question, like when staff brings something to us, is, well, how should we do that? So they're gonna want like a recommendation of, you take 2 people from each commission in the town and they work on this, or you hire a consultant. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying you hire a consultant, or what, you guys are the ones telling them we think you should do this, and their natural follow-up question to that is typically, well, how do you suggest we do that? And I think they're going to struggle with this if that piece isn't there. It's just 2 cents. That's all it's worth, if that.
I mean, it is awesome if you were to suggest that, we have a member from these different departments to come together in a committee. That would be amazing, because, just to say, yeah, this department, you should revise your codes within 2 years, and this is what we want to do as far as measurements, but we have no buy-in from public works. So, but if we were to say, we want one person from here, here, and here, and here.
I think they'll just, okay, you want us to buy into this, and you want us to ultimately adopt a policy. How is that policy going to get created?
Were you leaning into your mic there, Rick? Did you have something?
Well, I like the idea of multiple people from the commissions working on this, but I think the concern I have is sunshine laws and how do we make that happen? I mean, it seems like it's difficult to find space here for a meeting as it is. And if we have another commission working on something, is it practical? Can we get, you know what I mean?
Well,
Actually, I do believe, Kay, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but as long as there's not it doesn't have to be another official commission. It could be 2 people from Bike Ped, 2 people from Park and Rec, a person from P and Z. And in that case, it'd be more like a working group that they would develop that, then run it back through their full commissions for formal approval. And I think those folks could get together whenever they wanted to, because they're not acting as a single commission for the town.
well, I think the gating issue is that they
2 or less.
understand the importance of the resolution, how it fits with the execution of a plan, and they recognize that and agree to move forward with it. I'm really reluctant to try as a commission, with no authority, to make recommendations as to how, and not even knowing what this might involve, who it has to pull in to get a policy written, to start making recommendations, specific recommendations. I see no harm and, potential benefit in just making a soft recommendation that we would form some kind of multifaceted group to begin to draft policy and bring it to the trustees. Is that, I don't know how we can go farther than that,
I think that kind of answers that question of what's next. Well, we're going to put this group together and we're going to start working on this thing. That was just a piece that seemed like it was kind of missing, that they would go, okay, now we approve this, then what?
Well, we can stick a couple of lines in the letter on that, I think, right? Yeah.
And that is the first step that's listed in the map recommendation I was mentioning. The step 1 is basically that, assemble a group of
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Okay, one other thing, and we got to move along because I know we got a hard stop at 4:30. We need to get to map. Hey, David, there were some, the reason there are 2 exhibits in here, because one was, I think, taken from Complete Streets, and one was sort of used AI to help generate it.
Yeah.
And you had some thoughts that maybe a mixing and matching of the 2, I think.
Just when I read the 2 together, I just thought, I liked a lot of the brevity sometimes, but sometimes I was like, oh man, they're missing actually some important points. And I was saying, there's nothing wrong with having the full longer version. I just sometimes think in terms of.
You thought in some
too
cases
long,
the AI version was a little shorter and in a couple of the instances.
Yeah, I just thought if I looked at the AI, I'd say, well, that's pretty good. But, if I pulled 4 of the 10 points from the longer version over to the AI, it might
have a
nice compromise
combination.
between
Okay.
being short. It was just a personal.
Well, let's try to move this to closure. I'll make a motion here that we proceed to bring this to the trustees. We use the letter drafted with the additions suggested, recommended, and that David, I liked your suggestions or let me put it this way, that we'll edit the exhibits to merge both the AI version and the non-AI version to based on David's recommendations. And I know we don't have those recommendations, but I guess I'm asking, well, let me do this. Would the commission be comfortable if we give David the latitude to merge the exhibit as he suggested, and then using that.
Is it possible to just say, I mean, I have here just points 1, 6, 8, and 9. I said, well, pull over from the other. I mean, I can send that out.
What do you want to pull 1, 6, and 9?
1, 6, 8, and 9, just from the longer version. And
Pull it from which version?
I think of things as an AI short version. And I guess what's the other one? It's called draft, I guess.
Okay, so you want to pull 1, 6, 8, and 9 from the AI version.
No, from the draft version. Let's see if I'm calling these right. Oh, wait, actually, this draft is, they're both drafts, of course. I was
David, hold
proposed.
on, because we're going to run out of time and we got to get to map. Okay, so you've been heavily involved in drafting this, and if the commission's comfortable on allowing you, Rick, and I to draft a letter and decide on the exhibit, then the three of us can talk later and do that. Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay, because the comments in the letter have been discussed. I think the changes in the exhibits are not, they're all the 10 points address the same things. It's just language. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then the motion would be, is the commission comfortable with making the presentation to the trustees that they consider passing a complete streets resolution, and it would be presented based on a letter with the changes recommended?
Can I ask a real quick
Sure.
question? When are you intending this to go to the Board of Trustees?
Along with the map.
Next week.
They probably will not consider a resolution because it's not they'll probably want to look at this separately. If I was you, I would say, we think you should do this in whatever letter you write related to map. And we would like to get on an agenda to talk to you in more specifics very quickly. Because the item is about map, not about complete streets. So they're not gonna have a separate item on this next agenda to talk about complete streets.
So it's not, I thought we had until Thursday to get things on the agenda. I guess that's not necessarily true, right? Because
The mayor and the.
sets the agenda.
Yeah.
Right,
so
understood, right, okay. Fair enough.
I think what you're asking for is time so you can talk about this.
Yeah, I understand that. And I also understand that, and maybe this addresses some of the, timing concerns that since MAP recommends adopting a complete streets resolution, that we could include that in our response and then come back and ask Ben to put that on the agenda.
Yeah, I think that could be done. I'll take a look and I'll shoot an email to you, Matt, see what the agendas for February are. I mean, I think it could be done.
I think there's two things. One, as it turns out, that's probably better, right? To get them to digest MAP, understand that MAP makes that recommendation, that we support that recommendation. And practically, we don't really have a choice because we don't get to stick things on Ben's agenda. Right?
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
Yeah. And if it's so,
Or change map,
what's that?
or change map.
No.
Yeah.
Or change map.
Or change MAP, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think, thanks, Kevin. I think that's actually a reasonable suggestion that, I think what we've concluded is that, Bike Ped supports complete streets resolution. I think in the interest of, I know we're anxious to have it move, but I think it'll go better and be smoother and more understandable if we move through MAP first. You guys agree with that?
Makes sense.
Okay. So, I mean, as it is, we'll meet in a couple of weeks for the February meeting and we can reach out to Ben and ask him post Tuesday, and he'll understand the request because it'll be presented in mail. Okay? All right, good idea.
So there's no motion then?
We'll table it until February, right? Just cancel that. Okay,
I would like to say, I don't think that you used whereas enough in the current complete streets policy. And I think if you're going to consolidate with another AI version, you'll probably bulk it up with more whereases. That'll be good.
we will have a time now to do it properly. Okay, how much time we got, guys? We have 20 minutes. Rick, you want to take this since I don't even have it in front of me and maybe walk through the 4 points we sort of came up with? Is that? Or you can hand it to me and I'll do it if you want.
Not sure.
What's that? I'm thinking the 4 points off the draft of the letter.
Oh.
In terms of just response. Well, think about that. And let me say, I think that most, if not all, the recommendations we made in December were adopted. No?
We didn't have the table of content, I just said.
Oh, sorry.
These things like really long, you just have, like, where the heck do you find these things? But that's just a minor point, but if I was looking at it for the first time, it'd be like, what page?
What page? Okay. Okay, so I don't want to say all the important comments. I want to say, but I appreciate that, Kevin, that they seem to have captured for the most part things we asked for. I think that my feeling was that those things we asked for were a way to get some stuff into the report to allow us to have some things to circle back and work on. Because there was still a lot of gaps in there, right? For example, it's hard to figure out where to start if you don't have a list of objectives that you're going after. So now we have that. Having said that, I think that we can acknowledge that there's some good things in there, but we also have to recognize that there's still a lot of work to do around the information that was provided. And so I think where Rick and I took this, and we'll share that with you now, is that there's good stuff, but I think there's a couple of areas we need to now focus on. Do you want to, can you give those to us, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this before. The most obvious one to me is an implementation plan. So where do we start? How do we set priorities? We have a very long list of potential action items, but no particular guidance on what to do with them. So to me, that's a huge piece. And I guess we want the trustees to help us with deciding how we do that, as with Complete Streets. What's that process? Who does that? Is it a combination of bike bed and trustees, or, how do we develop that? And it's not just, for us, I think it's not just starting in year one, it's thinking about how a process that whatever, if the phases are year one, year two, year three, or some other length of time, that we think about the strategy for one phase into another phase and integrating with existing infrastructure. So it's a complex set of challenges that we have to move forward, and we don't have experience with that. So how do we address that? We did do sort of a hypothetical 1 page. This is what sort of an outline of an implementation might look like. But again, we need some guidance, I think, on that, and we need the trustees to help us figure out where we go. What's the first step in that? I think also we also talked about some more detailed planning with the project list, and starting to think in more detail, for instance, on the two the two suggested demonstration projects. So we get into more details about what those I think when it was Hendrick and 8th Street. As a demonstration project, we get into thinking about what needs to happen to work on those demonstration projects, how they might integrate with other demonstration projects, how we might use those demonstration projects to meet the needs of other areas of town that maybe we're hearing from people that feel like they've been neglected, that, how come Hendricks got to be in the plan and we didn't, you know what I mean? So how do we move through that process? Okay, we're going to develop these two demonstration plans, but how do we move from there to an adjacent street or plan? How do we use what we learned from that demonstration project to inform other projects? Just a lot of details before we jump into action plans. I think we're a little nervous that if we jump into an action plan arbitrarily without thinking about all these other aspects and how it integrates with current infrastructure, we may have to undo things that we do because we didn't think through it carefully enough. You know what I mean? I think also feeling like there needs to be I think we've mentioned a vision for long-term growth, how to deal with long-term growth in terms of transit specifically, but also integrating all of our projects over the years. So, just some sort of visionary look at what we're trying to accomplish. Maybe there's some guidance that we have out there on design standards that we ought to consider. Matt, I think that's brief cover,
I think that's it. I think, simply put, we got some great information in the report, but long list of objective, a long list of action steps. Somebody's got to figure out what we tackle first, right? What's important, what do we do first and how do we do it, right? The project list, as it was informed, it has some great suggestions, but we also know we've heard some people from the community who weren't heard and aren't on that project list. And a number of the action items should inform the project list. And given limited time, resources, money, we want to make sure we get that right before we start moving forward. So we're asking the trustees to recognize that. And, I think one area where the report really didn't go is just long-term strategies, right? One of the objectives we had at the beginning, I think, was, hey, we're a town dealing with growth, changing demographics, increased density. We need to start trying to get ahead of that issue as we think about all of our transit stuff. And that's another point we want to make to the trustees. So I think there's great. The map report's great. Now we got to work on implementation, rounding out the project list, have room to think about long-term strategies. And we did mention a fourth one, which is adopting complete streets, right? And then we would offer up sort of, I think in my mind, the most important part of this is jumping into implementation. So we did offer up a sample of what a phased-in implementation might look like. And I think it's important that the trustees recognize that there's still, MAP is not a finished project. You can't just pick it up and start doing stuff. We need to take it and then put it into a framework and start doing things. And I think it's important for them to recognize that because if we get to work on things, we want them to understand why we're doing it, right? If they just want to follow MAP, and that's one conclusion. If they acknowledge there's some gaps with MAP and how you take MAP to execution, then that's a different set of facts. And I think that if it's just MAP, then it's just MAP. And I think it's important to point out that where it falls short and what we have to do next, so they're willing to work with us in terms of getting to the next steps. So I think that's what the letter's trying to convey. think Rick and I were hoping to, Kevin, when do we have to have everything ready for get into the package? If we want this letter into the packet,
Thursday
Thursday
before noon.
before noon. So, this is really, I'm opening up for comments, thoughts, suggestions on that, on taking that direction in our response to the trustees. And I think given the time we've had, it just, we didn't want to formalize, publish, or do anything without having a conversation here with you guys as to what ideas you have for the appropriate response to the trustees.
So one thing that can help support complete streets is, and first off, they have the 10 elements, but for some reason they went A through J. I assume that's 10 there. I don't know. I'd have to.
Oh, in the report.
Is J the 10th letter? I don't know. But anyway,
Yes.
okay, I'd assume. So point I says set criteria for choosing projects. Someone else's plan, they called it project selection criteria. So one thing you could say in that is to say that, one of the things that the Complete Streets policy will include, so you can say it's missing in map, but we have this opportunity to be specific because it's important. And it's just another way to say, like, let's not drag our feet.
I mean, on the complete
On
streets.
complete streets,
Yeah.
because that's part of what will help us create that criteria for what projects
To do,
come first.
to help us
Yeah.
prioritize.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's even mentioned in the report, you picked up on it, Rick, I'm not sure where it was, but the recommendation was for the consultant that somebody needs to draft an implementation plan, right? Right. So it's pretty well recognized, I think, at least by the consultant, right?
Yeah, I think we thought that we'd get some guidance on developing an implementation plan from the consultant, but all he did was basically say, you need an implementation. So I have I'm in some dental work and I have a fake tooth in my mouth, so stumbling. I think obviously the consultant felt that was something outside of his purview, that we needed to develop our own, or somebody else needed to develop an implementation plan. So he put that in MAP.
David,
Somebody needs to do it.
David, your point, I think, was in light of needing an implementation plan, the Complete Streets offers a framework for that, and therefore let's follow through on that recommendation.
Right. In other words, that's like point 9 is, set the criteria for choosing projects and
Right.
closes the loop, you might say. And one comment, I don't know if I'm the only one, but this Complete Streets edition, these 2 pages, mine goes 1, 2, 3, 11.
I think there's a link that shows you for the 10 steps. Click here. Do you
Right.
see that?
Yeah, I see that down here.
Yeah, so I think that might be, mine looks that way too. And I thought there was a page missing, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering if it's that you have to click, I can't do it here, but if you
I
click
think
on the link, you get to the tab.
Well, these are the 2 pages.
I noticed that too. I think it's just a typo and it should go 1, 2, 3, 4,
On that
but the 11 picks up after the letters.
It was a typo as well.
Yeah.
Well, it'll get resolved, right? I want to make sure we have 7 minutes. I want to make sure if anybody has other comments on how a response to
Main thing is,
the trustees, we capture those.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Annie.
Okay. So I think you sort of touched on this one would be helpful. We haven't actually been shared on the text that you all wrote, right? That you were describing.
I'm sorry?
You were describing, like, it looked like you had wrote a draft of a letter.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've been working on it, and Rick and I started giving you the highlights of the content.
Great.
And we'll share it. I mean, I'll
Okay.
share it
No,
with,
that sounds good. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing
Yeah.
something I was supposed to have read. You sort of touched on this, but I think, giving them the action items and the project list map has like a general order already, like the 0 to 5 years and
Mhm.
et cetera. And I think you mentioned this, that we need to, like, within that, give them a list of like, these are the things to prioritize. I think, I mean, we're not gonna figure that out in the next 5 minutes, but I think it is like the sort of rational next step. And I think people on the board, especially like, I know Colin, I think, is specifically eager to like, we need to actually make changes and wants to be able to do that soon. So I think at least telling them that like in the next month or the next 2 months or something, that we're gonna have like a more concrete list of at least what our recommendations are in terms of like what to prioritize. I think that makes sense for us to work on as a board. I think it makes sense to, or as a commission, and I think it makes sense to tell the board that we are working on that in some, at least general timeline. Yeah, I guess I'll leave it
Yeah,
there.
I think that's right. I think it falls on us to start that ball rolling, at least for discussion as to what the priorities would be. And maybe we'll state that more clearly. We did offer as an example what that might look like, not to say this is our list, but just to sort of get them thinking about what it might look like and how we might phase them in. Okay. Lori, what was yours?
I think it's going back to what Rick said about implementation, but it's like all the things we've talked about tonight, to me, we keep coming back to the same subjects of like, how do you implement, how do you prioritize? We talked about this so many months ago.
Mhm.
And using the interagency, because to me, it seems like if you're going to the trustees for approval, to me, that means money. And it kind of comes down to money, or is it saving lives? Are we prioritizing by preventing a child from getting hit on the way to school on 133? Or the reality, is it budget driven? And so I think just none of us alone can just decide to make a list. It has to include money, manpower, equipment, joyful Carbondale small town, and future vision. So I think emphasizing this like cross-agency, but I love the idea of us saying this is a suggested
Right.
roadmap with specific intersections. And we're never gonna please every person in this community. And at some point, like you guys at the end of the meeting, you said, oh, by the way, we're putting in that crosswalk across from Garcia's. Like, where did that come from? Like, that's how I felt. Like, wait a minute, we've been planning every little tiny thing that we're gonna do. And then you just announce, oh, we're doing this. So I feel like at some point we do have to just jump in and start an intersection and paint a crosswalk or put a flower there or build a little blinking light
Right.
without planning the rest of our lives.
Well,
We
I
can't.
appreciate all that. And I think, yes. And when we have conversation about priorities, if that's where we go, then we'll take all that stuff up into consideration. And I think the letter Rick drafted acknowledges it involves budgets and other things, right? As we figure out how to prioritize.
Yeah. And I think we recognize, I think we're going to lose the public trust if this goes on for 3 years and we've done nothing. I
Right.
mean, I've already heard from people saying, what the heck? I mean, this has been 2 years and we haven't seen anything. So I think it's got to be expeditious. We need to move.
Mhm.
Right.
And we probably haven't done as good a job as we could have communicating where we are in the process, just to retain that public trust and that it is happening and it will happen. So, yeah, balance.
Okay, we have a hard stop at 4:30. Any other comments on a response? I think, we couldn't formulate a response without meeting. Given the time constraints that it's now Tuesday, we have until Thursday at noon. We'll take what we have, we'll take the comments you guys have given us today, and Rick and I will try to send it out to all of you, email, and you can get back to us with any other comments you might have on the letter that would come from the commission to the trustees regarding MAP. Okay, and this is to go in their packet for Thursday, And it'll be discussed at the trustees meeting on next Tuesday, a week from today.
And I just want to bring up one thing, because it was a request that you might have had for this version of map. And I'm fine either way, but there is an alternate priority corridor map in there, page 15. I didn't know if you wanted that thrown out or not. It just happened to be brought up in the last meeting. And I didn't know if,
I think map's done, right? Isn't that version's done? I think we recommended that get tossed out and it was still in there. So,
It was left in there, nothing more, as kind of like you said, you were gonna give a list of projects as an example of how you could prioritize. It was just, hey, this is another way you could look at it. It wasn't saying do this. It was just, you have the one that you have now. Here's another way you could look at it. It was not intended to be a recommendation.
right. I mean, as I understand it, the project's still over, right? It's just going to the trustees for approval. And I think it's important that we weigh in with any reservations we have about the report and how to take what we've been given from the consultant and move it forward into action. That's sort of, I think, the intent of our presentation next week. Okay?
I have a clarification.
Yes.
There was a comment about getting written comments to Jared to be included in the trustees packet, and that needs to be in by Thursday.
No, that needs to, the written comments that you're referring to are tomorrow. These guys have till Thursday.
So public comments are Wednesday to Jared,
To Jared.
to Jared.
Okay.
Kevin, just in terms of process, if there are written comments and someone says, we feel strongly that this element is missing and ought to be added to map, is what's literally in the plan done?
The trustees at this point could say, change anything they wanted to. That's their prerogative. But it's moving to that level now. So,
Right.
I mean,
That's, I understand that comment, right? Okay,
the one thing I would say is if you do things via email, as you're responding, please do not reply all, just reply to the people.
okay. Everybody understand that? Okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
I have no idea. I was like, man,
am I
missing?
I think it is.